Hi, this week I'm not going to be exhibiting any 3D work because I think before jumping into that, it's pretty much obvious that you need the concept to work on 3D first of all landed on 2D. And the reason why I'm doing this video on this week particularly is because, well, first of all, if you don't know, I do commissions for 3D character animation, of course, and I start always with the planning for a character, his background, his story, and develop that through the colors and schemes that the character will have. And of course, later on, that will be translated into 3D. And one of the key aspects to do NPR animation it's to have a clear goal with the color palette and also the way it's colored. So this tutorial will show some of the basic things. It's not really an advanced tutorial, and of course this is not advanced illustration. This is just for concept prototyping, if you would call it. And the way it works is that we are going to take a grayscale value and then we're going to paint with a color layer on top of that. We're going to slide the values for the levels so that we can quickly manipulate the three shade tones that we have on the grayscale, all right? And that's going to drive our final color. Of course, later we can tweak the color itself and flatten the layers, and we can continue drawing and painting because, like I previously mentioned, this is all about concepting, grabbing that key aspect moment of the story and of the character. And it's in this case, both characters have been worked so that they oppose each other as into fire and water. Case, I'm not fully painting this because there's a huge difference between doing animation for TV and drawing illustration for manga. So that's a huge difference. Whenever you're creating something for animation, you will also try to simplify things. It's not very detail oriented because you cannot do the same drawing over and over and over and over on all those details. Although some houses, animation production houses, do this kind of techniques, which have to do with the lighting of the character in order to make it appear more detailed, such as the illustrations on the mangas. But in our case, I'm just doing this as a concept. Later on, when this is modeled in 3D, I'm going to be taking portions of the hair and subdividing it, and then over the period of time, I'm going to be shading or painting that directly into the textures. That way it will look more detailed. But in reality, we are going to work as simple as possible. Okay. So there are a couple of rules here, since I know you're an illustrator as well. There are a couple of rules that it should be followed, that should be followed when we're doing this. So the correct order for anything you do, it's the dark piece, the shadow, the midtones, and then the highlights. And this is the regular order. Whenever we have, let's say for example, a highlight and a shadow right next to each other, it will not work very well because they are both colliding. That cannot be possible. There always should be a middle tone to everything you do. So that is why I started with, well, if you see the other video, that's why I started with a neutral gray. So in that case, the second thing that I start to do, it's the highlights. And then finally the shadows, because wherever the highlight is, the opposite side will be the shadow. So that's a no-brainer. This is a personal matter. This is a personal workflow that I follow. It's to first create the highlights and then I create the shadows, because that way I know they always have to be opposite sides on each other. Say for example, this side is highlighted, and this one is going to be on the opposite side, shadow, see? And of course we're receiving the light over from this distance to this vector, to this direction, and I wanted to make that clear on his face. So right now I'm going to start the process of coloring this. I'm using Photoshop at the moment, but this is a better method handled in clip paint. Okay, so right now I have all my shadows on this layer and all my line art on a separate layer, as you can see right there. And then finally, the middle colors, let's turn those off. The color is right here, but instead let's rename this as Grayscale. I want to make this quick because there's not much science on it. And as you can see, the sharp edges are done using the lasso tool. Now on Clip Paint, there is the lasso tool to paint. So that means whatever area I enclose, it's gonna get automatically painted. But here in Photoshop, what I do is I select something to paint. Let's say, for example, in this, and then I press Alt Delete. I'm sorry, Control Delete. Control Delete will use this first foreground color to fill anything I am doing. I'm going to demonstrate that over here. Let's say, for example, I want to do this as a shadow. I'm going to select that and then Control Delete. I'm sorry, Control Delete, it's the background, and Alter Delete, or not delete, actually it's the SUPR, I don't know how that's pronounced, which is right besides the Enter key on the numeric pad. That is the shortcut to fill, or rather to do this kind of thing. So after that, it's obvious I'm going to place my line art. I can even use a normal or multiply mode so I can see through the lines, but in my case I don't do that. So now we're going to paint. So what I'm most interested now, of course, another thing I wanted to narrate right now that it's not mentioned on the other videos, is that this lock here represents that it's only going to be painting wherever there are pixels. So let's say I don't have pixels. I'm going to switch my color. I'm going to switch my color to something like blue. Let's say blue. I'm on the Grayscale named layer B to brush paint this, and then I'm going to brush paint. See that? It's going out of bounds inside the pixel area, the pixel painted area, and the non-pixel area. Okay, but I don't want that. Instead, I want to paint inside only. So I'm going to select my Grayscale, and then I'm going to switch on Paint on Transparency Only. That's why this lock is there for. So Paint on Transparency Only, what it's going to cost, see that? It's going to be painting only inside the layer. So that's very good, very useful. Clip Paint also has that feature. I don't know, right now I'm not going to turn it off because I'm mostly interested in finishing this piece, as it is concept only, and as I mentioned before, this is not a painting tutorial, but I just wanted to share this in case you find something useful along the process. So next thing I'm going to do right now is to mix those two, and let's say, for example, I want to paint his face. All right, so I'm going to concentrate into his face. So let's select this face and also the chest area, because that's the one that we're going to be painting as well. Selecting all of that where the facial color is going to be applied. I'm going to be showing you this as a little example because you can do this on any other selection that you have. I'm excluding the hair. All right, so everything about this is skin. So let me fix this. Everything about here is skin for skin purposes. All right, perfect. So I'm going to create a new layer, which I'm going to be calling color. And in that layer color, I'm going to select the color of his face. I'm going to select this one, and then Alt Delete, and then I get my solid color. But where did all my shading go, or how do I get it back? When you're doing this kind of shading, you switch the layer mode, the layer transfer mode, and set it to either overlay, or in my case, I'm going to set it to color. Whenever you set it to color, the full range of that grayscale is affecting this how do you call this? This area, okay? So in my case, it detected the color tone that we selected, and the mid-gray tone that it had, and also the darkest tone it had. But since I have it right there as color, I'm going to select it. So I'm going to press Control and then click over the layer, and that is going to be my selection. But I'm going to be working not on the color layer that only served me as a filter, but right now I have selected this, And I want you to see what is going on. I'm going to press Control L for levels, and I'm going to be working with the levels. See, if I move this, I can make this lighter, or I can make this darker. All right, lighter or darker. Perfect. Okay, so I'm now going to reactivate my color layer, but I'm going to be working, like I mentioned before, on my grayscale. Again, Control L, and now I'm going to be moving this into a lighter shade. See that? I'm controlling my tones directly with the grayscale. Perfect. I think that could work. Nice. Now let's switch off the color layer, and now you can see the correct grayscale value. It's already on the original, in this case, let me rename this to grayscale values. All right, so that way we know what we're talking about. So the same thing I'm going to do on the hands. Let's continue. That's the color. So if I keep painting with my color, which is already selected there, now I'm going to make my selections for the skin on the arms, and later on the hands. I don't want to make this too long because, like I already mentioned, this is not a painting tutorial, but just a process along the way. Neither I'm going to be doing this for the 3D things, except for the controls when everything is already finished and created, so that you'll know what parameters you can use. But in my case right here, I'm just setting this up so that you can know how the process can help you to paint and illustrate in this way. And just like I mentioned, this is the way studios do this when compositing animation. Okay, so that's mostly it. I'm on the color layer using a color blend mode. Okay, and then I'm going to select my skin tone, which I already had, and now I'm going to press Alt and I'm sorry, Control. Okay, Control and hey, there it is. Alt and Delete. Alt and Delete. The one that is under the Insert key right besides the Enter key on the keyboard. So again, with my selection of the hands already active, I'm going to go back into the grayscale values, Control L, and then I'm going to move this all the way up until I see a color that matches his head. This one looks just perfect. So that way we have the correct tones everywhere. I'm going to turn off now the color. You have the right tone here, the right grayscale tones here, and also here. Nice. So this is going to be called color skin. Perfect. You can apply patterns to do half tones, for illustration. And we already have defined what illustration has in difference with animation. Animation simplify, illustration over illustrate or over details. All right, so let's paint this completely. And last but not least, I want to address that we're working with grayscale values in order for us to put color on top of it, and that it will automatically inherit the grayscale values and differences. So right now I'm defining my selection here because I want to fill this character with the color gray. Okay, so I'm selecting everything about the character, and now I do my grayscale selection. Now I'm going to lock my transparency option for the layer. That means that whatever I'm painting and there is a pixel value, it will get painted. Wherever there is not a pixel value, then it will not get painted. You can see that right there on the lock. And now I'm defining my highlight areas first. Yes, I know we all have been, working backwards, but this is just a personal preference where I want to start off with the lighter, if you could say it that way, color in this character. So I'm going to go for my highlights. And the second thing that I'm going to do is to select a color that is in the middle way or in the middle step of grays, so that I can have my dark areas as well. So here I'm defining every aspect of the light that is coming from the top down and from the top right. Okay, so this is why the shadow of the hand falls in this way, and also the bandages and the pants, of course, and the feet as well, the shoes, and this part of the pants. So everything I'm doing here is selecting all of the dark areas, and now you can see a very contrasty, how you could say this, a very contrasty poles, if you can say it that way, with the left side being the bright side and the right side being the dark side. Okay, shadows. So I'm going to do it once again here in the hair. I'm defining first the volume, so I'm going to select it, select the entire hair, send a single grayscale value. Alright, it's a neutral gray, if we can say it that way. And now I'm going to go for my highlights. And of course, I'm going to signal on my transparency layer lock. So that way, I'm only painting where there are pixel information. And the shortcut I'm using is Alt Delete from the numpad keys. And that way, I select with the lasso and then fill. Select with the lasso and then fill. I find it's a very quick way to do it. So now I create a color layer with a normal blending mode, and I switch that normal blending mode to color. And that way it overlays. And now I'm going to switch the levels under that layer onto my grayscale layer, which contains the values to be driven. So let me delete the things that I don't need, because right now I'm going to do a overlay over the hair with a gray color so that it will turn dark. Because when we are doing an animation or illustration in these cases, we do not fully paint the hair black. The only black things are the lines, and sometimes the lines aren't even considered as a black color, but rather another close color for defining the areas. So I have these two characters, as you can see right here. Now I'm going to go for the color dodge, and of course I can duplicate that, put it on screen mode, so it could have that anime look, blur it a little bit, and also dodging with a custom brush, or you can as well place a gradient correction layer. Either way, I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see you on the next video. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much.